Have you ever thought of mixing FNAF, Nullscape, and Dandy's World? Yes? Crap. About 2 weeks ago, I began work on a roguelike called Terminal Ascension. This game was supposed to be completed as a week-long challenge, but I underestimated just how much of a task making a FNAF Fangame was, let alone a roguelike one, so that didn't work out. The game itself was interesting enough for me to want to expand upon it though, so I kept working on it. I had originally intended to build this project upon that base I had already created, but wow, it was a mess. I learned quite a bit from that project and as such knew how to go about making it more modular. So instead of rewriting the codebase for 2 years, I decided it'd be a better decision to just redo the game from the ground up, since it was only a week of progress. In this devlog, I'd like to go into how I went about remaking the game and the major gameplay changes I'm working on, and how it all kind of fell through. Before we begin, please subscribe so I can hit 10k before my channel's 2nd anniversary, and feel free to leave any constructive criticism you have in the comments as I'm actively trying to improve my writing and editing styles. Also join my Discord! To catch you up to speed, in this game, you play as someone who has just died. Fortunately, you made a deal with this guy, known as the Moon Man, to get your life back. All you have to do is ascend to the top floor of the Void, where you were sent after dying, and it'll let you leave. There's a caveat though, and that is that the enemies will attack you as you ascend, including the Moon Man, as he sees it all as a game. And he doesn't really like when you leave, so he kinda becomes this thing. The gameplay itself, unlike a traditional FNAF Fangame, uses a full motion first person camera, similar to an FPS game. After restarting the project, the first step I took to making the game actually modular was to set up the shop system as efficiently as possible. For a bit of background if you didn't see my last video, in this game, similar to Nullscape, you'll choose between 3 enemies between floors out of a random list, and occasionally also be able to get upgrades. I set up this system so it accesses an array that stores the scene data of each enemy, chooses a random one, and then spawns in an item loading that data. For the sake of efficiency, the literal actual enemy scene is what spawns in as the item icon. I just created a toggle that makes it so it never starts doing any of the functions that the enemy normally would. When I completed that, I'd planned to get work on a scene transition system, but instead, I got sidetracked and spent a day learning how textures work in Godot and decided to remove a pixel art shader I was using for aesthetic reasons. After figuring all of that out, I actually got onto the scene transition system. To mask what was happening, I set up a little animation where a door encompassing the entire elevator is raised while the level is loading. Because of this, I also once again got sidetracked with polish and decided to have a little fade-in text tell you the next floor you're arriving on. Which also meant that I gave the same effect to my interaction text, as I decided I needed to polish that too. After this, I threw away all my progress to restart again. Wait, what? Yeah, so I've been getting back into FNAF Fangames again after kind of taking a break from them and doing more Roguelike content, and an unfortunate or fortunate side effect, depending on your perspective, is that I realized my game was, bad, pretty much from the concept stage itself. I was just trying to get something out in that 1 week without thinking too deeply about it, and I didn't realize the issue until now. The first and most important issue is just that the game had no real direction. It's vaguely Nullscape and Frickbears 3 inspired, with a bit of Dandy's World if only on concept, which just isn't much. I didn't know what I wanted to do with gameplay, and I primarily did the FPS controls because I was inspired by my friend Prototype Posting's game One Night at Puggo's, which is a fun game, but my game was not designed around that camera system, so it was a mess. So instead I've done some reworking there, and in the future version of the game I'll have a camera similar to Frickbears 3, with your mouse being fully free. The plan is to just fix the direction and figure out what I'm doing before working on it again. I'd still like to keep the core gameplay loop the same, choose one of 3 random enemies, go into a floor, clear the goal for that floor and get more enemies and upgrades, but I really need to get it solid and down. The concept technically has already changed a bit though. Instead of turning a wheel to ascend up a floor, you're instead harvesting some material that the Moon Man needs. And he's essentially your business partner, and he'd also be the shopkeeper for this version of the game, since I just found that more interesting and more funny and I wanted to have him have more of an involvement with the plot. Aside from that, as for gameplay, the 3 things I need to figure out are these: the enemy design, how you obtain upgrades, and the floor progression. Expanding upon that, floor progression is definitely one of my biggest gripes. I noticed from the start that it might be a problem just having you slowly turn a wheel, but it wasn't until I started looking back at my older videos that I realized why it was so off. First of all, it's boring. I mean, you're just holding down a button. And second of all, it is the same type of fluff mechanic that I criticized in my music box video, that just unnecessarily wastes time. I'm sure it could technically work in a scenario where I'm deliberately making a more psychological horror game such as Iron Lung, but this is supposed to be fast-paced and action-packed, and as such I'll have to figure out a more unique mechanic, probably more adjacent to like Pal Percy from Playtime with Percy, since I love that mechanic. Enemies will also probably need a rework, as the major 4 I've designed are kind of mediocre. There's the one you can't look at, the one you have to flash with your light, the one you have to be silent in front of, which just means not turning the wheel and not progressing, and the one you must hide from, which hiding mechanics are always especially in games where you have to actively hold a button to progress. All of them are just pretty generic mechanics wise and don't do enough to differentiate themselves from one another. I actually do really like their designs, I just don't think many of them currently work in a gameplay sense, at least with the current gameplay. I think an enemy you can't look at would be interesting if it was used in a very specific way though, and that way would be with a more traditional FNAF camera. The future plan is to push this game into a bit more of a traditional FNAF Fangame style, with the Frickbears 3 style of camera, the controls like that with like arrow keys, and retheming the UI a bit. Overall, I do think my game's concept is interesting, but it needs a lot of work to get it in a presentable state, though I would still like to get it out relatively soon. Honestly, this could end up wildly different by the next video, so if you're at all interested in this, feel free to subscribe, as I plan to go more in depth in my design process in the next video, which should be about designing and developing this new version of the game. If you like, you could also join my Discord, link down below, as I'm totally down to hear your interesting ideas and thoughts about my game.